Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the folks joining from different parts of the world. Welcome to Wire to Win webinar series. My name is Noor Basha, Marketing Manager at WinWire Technologies, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Before we start, let me highlight a few housekeeping items. During the webinar, please feel free to post questions in the questions window, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. Recording of this session will be shared in next 24 to 48 hours. So today's topic for the session is Demystifying Internet of Things with Azure IoT Suite. This is a three-part series which we'll be conducting in next few weeks. So before we start, let me introduce you to today's speaker. So first, we have Vineet Arora, who is the CTO at WinWire Technologies and brings over 20 years of experience in the IT industry. He is a Microsoft Azure Certified Architect and Microsoft Virtual Technical Specialist. We also have Amit Dubey, who is the Director of Cloud and Mobility at WinWire Technologies and brings over 15 years of experience in the IT industry. He is also a Microsoft Azure Certified Developer. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Vineet.
No, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you're joining from. Glad to be starting a series of our webinars. As Noor talked about, this is the first of the three webinars that we'll be doing around the Azure IoT and the overall IoT topics that Microsoft has released in the market over the last few weeks and months. Today, what I'm going to cover, along with my colleague Amit, is just give you a quick introduction to IoT. I'm sure you've been hearing all the buzzwords and all the articles and a lot of information being spread across. We'll also talk about what we think, as WinWire, about our point of view. We'll briefly cover what are the challenges that are, being looked at when you start planning for an Internet of Things project. Majority of the session will focus on Microsoft Azure IoT Suite, which is what is going to address many of these challenges, but also give you a lot of capabilities and flexibilities to build your IoT solution with a speed that you may not even be able to imagine. And that's where we will wrap up by showing you a detailed demo and a deep dive into one of the pre-configured solutions that Azure IoT Suite provides. That will take you into a scenario where we will be able to do a remote monitoring of a set of devices and what all technology components come in that particular solution. Let me start with this one very simple slide which talks about what is IoT, right? There has been a lot of definitions. Every project that you think about, right, has various components. There are new components that are now coming into any project design, and those are things, right? These are physical objects that have embedded technologies. Now, these are not your mobile phones or just your tablets. These things also have existed for a very long time. And as you will see in the next webinar that I will be covering in a couple of weeks from now, we will talk about how you could also program those things. But today's focus is on how we are going to be able to leverage the information that is generated by these things, these devices, these sensors. Again, these sensors have existed in the industry, in the manufacturing industry, in the healthcare, in almost all the industries that you can think of in various shapes and forms with their own proprietary implementation technology on how do they communicate the data, how do they capture the data. But when Gartner looked at saying, okay, now there is an evolution that is happening, right? When you want to term IoT, an IoT solution, it's a network of all those physical objects that have some embedded technology, but they're also communicating and interacting with an external environment. And you'll see what we mean when these devices become a lot more intelligent on what they are capturing and how they are communicating it to the other solutions. And just a quick representation of what I was talking about. This is nothing new, right? When IoT or devices always have had these capabilities that I talked about earlier too, right? This is a good representation that your microwave or your phone or your media player or your printer was able to even connect to, these servers that they provided, those vendors provided, right? Security cameras have existed. Move 5 years later, and you will see this explosion in the kind of devices that are now able to be able to communicate with the rest of the devices. These are not just only commercial, the ones that you and I use, from anything like a Nest thermometer to intelligent bulbs that have a lot of wireless connectivity built in, to the Fitbit band or other devices that you see. There are also a lot of industrial applications of many of these devices. And when you look at the expansion of these devices, you do need technologies that help behind it, right? And when you start breaking it down, the Internet of Things for these devices has to be 4 core focus areas. There are things, so there are sensors, there are devices, there are actual physical devices that will have to have all the capabilities that may or may not have existed, right? Including different kinds of communication, different kinds of storage, and many other capabilities that may not have existed because they have been mostly sort of dumb devices, not that intelligent. Those devices need to have connectivity, right? Bluetooth has been a revolution, of course, all of you know, over the last few years, right? But that's not the only communication mechanism that these things can communicate on. So there are other protocols and other connectivity aspects that needs to be also considered. And then the most important part is, why are we even talking about connectivity and devices if we cannot gather any data out of those devices? What are those devices recording? What are the interactions that are happening between any external environment and that device? That data has to be captured, it has to be processed, it has to be in an ability to be transformed so that ultimately you can make sense of that data. And that's where analytics comes into the picture. Analytics allows you to not only do monitoring of what the things are doing, but as you will see, historical data, the whole promise of big data, right, really comes into the picture when you have historical data and you can do scenarios like predictive maintenance. You can do what-if analysis of those devices and those environments that they are monitoring probably. So when you start looking at these 4 things to be a part of an overall IoT scenario, what is it that we need on the IT side, right, to plan a solution like this? Typically, right, and we have been at WinWire have been working with customers like solar industry customers, where they have had those proprietary devices. And this is some of our learning, right? So this is some of our observations. When you work on a solution which is very proprietary, like any other custom solution, you do have long timelines because you have to understand how those specifically those devices behave and work. Right? You have to build your server-side solution, which are going to be very specific to those devices. Where you're deploying it, there is always going to be a challenge in scaling. We worked with a solar company where they grew like, as the solar industry was growing at a pace that nobody had calculated, and their solution also needed to support that. But the way it was designed, it started choking in terms of the data that was being captured and the data storage and the processing part of it, right? Of course, the whole process of ingesting the data and doing analysis is complex. There are technologies that have existed for years and years that have allowed that. it's becoming more and more, as you will see, different scenarios in which you can receive that data. So you need some kind of a platform, some kind of a simplification of how you could configure this ingestion of the data and the processing of that. And one of the other things is, once you have built a solution where you're capturing data from your devices and processing it, right, as the business needs evolve, right, because the solutions have been so proprietary, so specific to that particular situation, right, newer systems and solutions that are being implemented, right, integrating those is an additional effort. All of you know how many SaaS solutions have evolved over the last 3 to 4 years, and they all work on APIs. Right? Yes, you can say that, oh, I should be able to call that API and work with that, but then you are not able to build something which is going to be a lot more open and a lot more flexible, right, at your end, because you're building something which is more proprietary. When we look at these solutions, right, we have also worked on different kinds of solutions, and we'll talk about the platform that we at WinWire are focusing on in building all these different kinds of IoT solutions. Right? There is everything around management of devices. There are solutions around retail, healthcare, and manufacturing. Right? And we will be talking about Azure IoT Suite, which is the Microsoft offering on the platform in which these solutions are designed, developed, and talked about. And in a very nutshell, one complex slide, right, if you have to look at how Microsoft has envisioned the whole IoT scenario, is you have the devices, we already talked about that, right? You have those machine-to-machine gateways or networks which are able to gather data from those devices. But what you see in the center of the slide is very, very critical. You have to have mechanism to collect that data, collect the information that is being sent from the devices, store that data. Maybe it is coming as a live stream, because most of the devices are just generating so much of data. It's not batch processing that you are able to do it every night or every week, right? You may be just getting a lot of data because activities are happening as the devices are monitoring other machineries or systems or environments in which they are. You have to analyze that data. There is no point in just gathering the data and dumping it and trying to create reports out of it, which may be more operational reports. You have to do aggregations. You have to look at patterns of what the data is. This is all part of your solutioning for an IoT solution. And ultimately, you consume the data. What is the end result of this data collection? What is the whole value of this data collection? Is that you can publish that analytics. You are gathering information to make decisions. That is the most important aspect that you have to consider for an IoT solution. Now, what you see is Microsoft Azure services for IoT. Microsoft started their whole IoT journey actually a few years ago, as Azure as a cloud environment has been evolving. There has been bits and parcels of technology that has been implemented. Over the last few months, and that's the whole purpose of this session, is they have combined all aspects of what are the IoT related services into one cohesive scenario, and that is called Azure IoT Suite. And we'll start breaking it down, but at a very, very high level, there are these 6 things that summarize what the Azure IoT Suite includes. The biggest aspect is, you have devices, but you have to look at how do you manage the connectivity of devices. Even aspects like registration of devices, because I should not be just arbitrarily receiving data from a set of devices. I need to be able to manage those devices. I have registration, deregistration, monitoring of the device's health or the availability itself, right? Rather than just the data or the processing that it's doing. There is this whole set of functionalities and and solutions that are required to bring in the data that those devices, and in certain cases, millions of those devices are bringing in, process that data, maybe do stream level processing, do analytics on top of it, and make sure that there is workflows that are possible to be done. Because you will need to be able to filter data, you will need to be able to integrate with other systems. And at the end of the day, all this data has to be visually represented. Not all this data probably, but the relevant data, so that whatever you're building as a solution, you're able to make certain decisions. And those decisions are like, how is the health of the environment, or how is the health of the devices that actually are monitoring, and I can make certain decisions. Decisions could be those devices are not working well, or those devices need improvement or maintenance or replacement. When you look at these scenarios, right, these are the building blocks. What Microsoft has done is they have configured or pre-configured solutions which address many of these industry scenarios, and we'll be talking about and showing you one of those scenarios around remote monitoring of devices. If I further break it down, you saw the high level. On the technology item, the Azure IoT Suite, if you're familiar with Azure, which I'm assuming, and if not, that's okay too. Azure is, of course, Microsoft's cloud platform, and within that, right, there are a set of services, everything from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service. What Azure IoT Suite has become is a combination of all these services that relate to all the scenarios that I was just talking about, from managing the devices to bringing the data from the devices and then processing that data. So there are these specific services, that core services that you see. If you were to build a solution, right, before Azure IoT Suite was in picture, right, yes, you will need to have some kind of a hub, which is making sure that you can capture data. You have some kind of a database. You have some kind of apps that you're building for the web UI. You're building some kind of a logic, right? And you will need, authorization, authentication of devices, management of security around those devices. All of that makes sense, right? If you have designed any sub-solution, even if devices are not involved, right? There are all these components. It's only that when the devices are involved, it's a lot more complex because of the proprietary nature of the devices in certain cases. Right? When we look at the Azure IoT Suite, you will be able to instantiate a solution which comprises of all these services, right, in a very easy fashion. And we'll show you in the demo part how you will be able to do that, rather than designing these bits and parts and trying to put them together. So consider this more of a toy that is already set and you just need to plug in, rather than Lego blocks that you're putting together. Of course, it may be made out of the Lego blocks itself, right? And that's where the idea is to accelerate time to value, but it does not mean that you cannot, further modify the solution. It is not a packaged product for a particular industry or a particular scenario. You will be able to add devices, you will be able to modify the rules, alerts, write your own code, right? And partners like us, right, we work with customers to fine-tune those specific assets and processes. And the reason I'm saying that is it's Microsoft that is providing this particular solution, right, as a base solution, and then companies like WinWire, right, are able to come in, work with your team, and then further enhance that solution to meet your specific business needs. So you have heard a lot of theoretical topics and concepts around Azure IoT Suite. Let me spend a few seconds showing you an end result or an end solution of one of the companies that worked on using that set of services that I just talked about on Microsoft Azure and built a solution, right? This is a company called ThyssenKrupp. Many of you may or may not have heard about it, This company, just to give you a background, is one of the largest organizations that manages elevators around the high-rise buildings around the world, not only just in the United States, around the world. Okay, that's good. That's a very old age business, right? Running elevators has been a very complex job, but it has been matured over many years that it has existed. What they wanted to look at was they had almost 1.1 million of these elevators running across the world in various cities. How do you make sure that you can maintain those elevators, the health of those elevators, so that they don't get stuck, they don't have a breakage, which ultimately leads to customer dissatisfaction, because there is nothing worse than being stuck in an elevator, but more than that, waiting for an elevator that is not going to come because you're running late for a meeting, right? There are many scenarios like those. But more than that, it's also about leveraging technology for a scenario where elevator is a device, and that device has multiple components that you need to be able to monitor and predict, right, based upon the information that you have gathered over the last few months, years, to see if, oh, maybe this elevator is going to have a problem. That's whole about that, and you may be able to send a technician to correct the problem or apply some kind of a fix before it actually happens. That's called predictive maintenance. So let me show you a solution. I'll switch over to a browser window and show you a solution which will talk about how the dashboard that ThyssenKrupp worked with Microsoft and implemented, which allowed them to get that whole health of their devices, in this case the elevators. This is a custom solution that was built. You will see they could manage customers, they could manage their devices. This is a map on which they were, this is just of course sample data, this is not the real data, but it's showing you at the command center, at their customer service center, they could get a good sense of, okay, there is something happening out here because this is in orange, right? There are maintenances that are scheduled, but there are 36 alerts. I can do a deep dive by clicking on that and get to see, okay, in the United States, there are many of these elevators, all of them are working fine, but I have this building, Virginia Mason Athletic Center, where it seems there is something going wrong with the elevators that we have out there. When I click on that, it brings up the actual UI saying there are 3 elevators out there, one of them seems to be having a problem. Now, remember, all this is the end result of a solution that I will talk about. I'll show you how this solution has been achieved, because elevators ultimately have those sensors that are gathering the data, and then I can look at it visually also, right? What you will start seeing based upon how well is it rendering on the GoToWebinar, right? There are these 3 elevators that each of them you can actually monitor in real time, right? How they are performing. They are actually going up and down, and you're gathering that data and in real time displaying it on this dashboard. The technician could also look at, okay, there are these, let me just make sure. I can click on one of those elevators and then get more information about that specific elevator itself, right? What is the kind of an asset? What is the model number? What is the health? Now, 83% means, what does that mean even, right? That means there is a processing that has happened of historical data about that particular elevator and other devices, similar elevators, to say, what does it mean that it's going to either fail or is it going to continue? You also have information around how the maintenance has happened over time. You have UI, which is showing you how many times it has been operated, right? You will say, what is the value of that? You can correlate a lot of this data, right? If I scroll down and show you, Let's make sure my mouse cursor. Okay, we'll come back to that. There are charts that can show you how the actual UI is, how is the actual data being processed, and making sure that you are able to do a lot of processing of that information and make certain decisions about the health of the devices itself. In this case, the elevator, and yes, I'm able to show you that. Hopefully, you're seeing. There is this dashboard that has processed the information about the elevator and able to show you predictive maintenance warning. Right? If it crosses a particular threshold, here is where you have scheduled the maintenance. But maybe you need the maintenance to be done much earlier, or maybe much later because it's working fine. So you have all this data at your disposal now to make some very intelligent decisions about the health of your environment. And all this has been gathered by going through a lot of sensor data that has been captured out in those elevators. Let me switch over to the slide deck, and we'll talk about what you actually saw. Right? And this is a demo. We'll be happy to talk about that. So what you saw out here is that you have things, in this case, elevators, that get you data, that you store, that you process, that you do processing on, and then you do visualization like what you saw and be able to do some predictive maintenance decisions, and then send some command or control. There are also things that you will be able to send back to the machinery, send back to the sensors to maybe take some actions rather than just do outside this particular environment. So this is closing the loop for a scenario where data is being used to make certain decisions and improve the business. Okay, how does this translate into actual implementation? Right? I talked about the high-level overview of what the Azure IoT Suite is. When you start breaking it down, the Azure IoT Suite is actually making sure that you have devices, and there are items around devices, actually event around devices that you can capture. So there is one layer of technology solutions which are making sure you're able to bring in that data. Right? There are different services that Azure provides. There is storage of those data that needs to happen depending on the kind of information that you're bringing in. Right? There are blob storage that has existed in Azure. There is relational storage. There is NoSQL storage. All of those storage are possible. You will be able to do transformation on that data, right? You will be able to store that data and over time and do analytics on that, which will going to ultimately be possible to be displayed on a website, in a mobile app, maybe integrate with other solutions or do dashboarding using Power BI that we are not going to cover today, but a very good solution from Microsoft to show the actual functionality. If you look at the ThyssenKrupp example, right, which of the components came into the picture, right? I've just highlighted those, right? So devices were sending the data. There was an event hub, which is a set of services which is capturing the data being sent over the network by those sensors on the elevators. There was a storage happening on the document DB, which is a NoSQL database that Azure supports. It was being transformed into a big data storage, which is the HD Insight, which is the Hadoop implementation on Microsoft Azure platform. And then ultimately, the website that I showed you was leveraging all this data to provide that visual representation and help in making decisions that the customer service, the technicians, and anybody who can make sense out of their data could then plan their reactive actions or proactive actions out of that. So having said that, right, this is what you saw. You are talking about all these scenarios. I've just built a little bit of more context to it because you are able to leverage these services, right? Now, when somebody builds that solution, you saw those various boxes, right? You have to build each of those pieces. But across the industries, all those pieces make sense to be working together, and they're already part of a scenario that anybody can plan. So what Microsoft has started doing is looking at Azure IoT Suite, right? They're also starting putting together, I'll skip through a couple of these slides. They also started putting together pre-configured solutions. And the next demo that my colleague Amit is going to show you is what does a pre-configured solution actually look like on Azure, right? These are solutions that actually are pre-configured, as I said, from a technology aspect. You as the user are able to provision them, and then we can work together on further fine-tuning it and making sure that you can either change the visualization or integrate it with the backend system. One of those solutions is all around remote monitoring. And I will bring up this slide, but a typical remote monitoring project should include going through all these stages where you are establishing what are you trying to monitor, what are your requirements, right? You'll need to look at devices. You will need to talk about additional solutions that you need to maybe integrate with. You need to look at the data that is coming in. More importantly, you have to talk about what are the alerts and actions that you need to actually implement for the data that is coming in, and then of course be able to deploy that solution and scale that solution, right, in those scenarios. So let me move over again back to the browser and show you what an Azure IoT solution looks like. This is, if you go to AzureIoTSolutions.com, actually Azure IoT Solutions.com, Suite.com, I'm sorry, Azure IoT Suite.com. If you have an Azure subscription, you can actually get started by leveraging this very quickly. I've created one remote monitoring solution that I will show you. But before I do that, let me just show you if you were to create a new solution, and these are the two solutions that Microsoft has pre-configured. And if I select remote monitoring, which is the only one available right now, the only thing that you need to provide is a name, choose a region where you want to deploy it, and of course, if you have a subscription, you'll have to choose that particular subscription, right? I'll keep this screen for a few seconds for you to understand that what it actually is doing by just filling up this form is it's provisioning many of these standard components that will be required for the solution. You could have designed your own solution and you could have implemented each one of them individually, right? And that would have taken an amount of time. If I fill up this form and say create my solution, it probably takes maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most, right? But you have a solution already configured with all these services, including even a website that I'm going to show you, which actually is already starting to monitor that data using the sample devices and showing you some dashboards out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this solution, show you that what the solution looks like, right? This is just pure out of the box remote monitoring solution that has been built. I'm sorry. I should go back to the very first page, and this is a sample solution for this demo that we have, that we have implemented. Once I launch it, what you will see come up on the screen is a default layout that is showing you sample devices and monitoring of those devices. These dashboards, either the map one or the telemetry history or these other dashboards that you see, are absolutely easy to be customized. But this is what comes out of the box, right? This is real-time data that is being captured. You could switch over devices, I could say, okay, I want to actually look at this device. Basically, what we are doing is there are two parameters that are being tracked here. There is alarm, and then there is, so I'll go here and I'll show you what are the rules. There is a humidity and there is a temperature that is being tracked, and there are two alarms if it crosses a particular threshold. Right? There are these sample set of devices that have been created. You are able to manage the device, and if you'll see, it's pretty typical of any device that you ideally would have to have the manufacturer, the model number, and serial number. This is all sample data that you can get rid of, change the schema of what this device database looks like. You could also add a new device. You could define these rules and what happens when a particular rule is to be selected. So I just selected a particular rule, and I can actually edit that rule to say my threshold is maybe not 48, maybe something else, and then what happens to that rule. Right? There is an action that you have to do. In this case, for the base solution, nothing has been done in an action except in terms of saying raise an alarm or send a message. You could think about implementing actions, and that's what we'll show you, where you will be able to change that, of maybe creating tickets in external system, maybe sending a message back to the device to change certain parameters or switch on or off any other aspect. So what the ease that I'm showing you of the components that are enabling this solution is very important. And if on the GoToWebinar the screen is refreshing, you must be seeing this is real-time dashboard that is showing you both the parameters, right, being displayed, right? Every few seconds it's capturing the data and then displaying it in this UI. So this is streaming data coming in, right, about humidity and temperature. At this point in time, and I'll come back to this screen, I'll switch over the control to Amit. Amit, who is been working on these solutions with my team, will show you, right, what are the services that were created behind this particular solution when we provision this solution, this pre-configured solution, and how they all work together. What are the technical components, so that you can get a good picture, and then what kind of a customization is possible. Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Vineet, for a very insightful presentation. So, hello everybody, this is Amit, and I would like to take you through the different components that are created when you configure a remote monitoring site using Azure IoT Suite. So now you just saw that how easy it is to create a remote monitoring solution using Azure IoT Suite. All you have to do is just go there and click on a button. So what's happening behind the scenes? What are the different things that get created? So I'll just show that to you. Now it's important that you understand all of these, because what Microsoft gives you is a pre-configured solution. So it has some properties, it has some dashboards and everything, but that may not be suiting your needs perfectly. So you will have to customize that, you will have to make some changes to it. So you need to understand like what are the different components that are involved to make those changes. And another important thing is like you have to scale it. Like when you have more number of devices getting connected to your solution, then you'll have to scale it. So you need to understand each of and every component that you can scale up and scale down depending on the bandwidth that is being consumed. So let's switch over to the Azure portal. Now, when you log into the Azure portal, you can go to this new preview portal. This is the new dashboard that you see. So here you see a number of components that are there on my Azure account. So what are the different ones that are created for this particular instances? You can filter it by WWREM monitor. That is the name of the resource group that was created for this particular demo. So you can use that as a filter to see what are the different things that are created. So what I can do here is I can just say I can search for that. So now here I've got only those particular things that are related to my remote monitoring solution. So let's see what are the important things that we should look at. First thing is the Azure IoT Hub. So this is the core of the whole solution. Basically, it's a new service provided by Microsoft. It is actually the centerpiece of the whole solution. What it does is it provides a gateway for your devices to connect to this setup. So all your devices are going to talk to the Azure IoT Hub. Now you can send messages to it, you can receive messages from the IoT Hub. So what happens is you have to make a call. Now it works on different protocols. You could use either HTTP, you could use AMPQ or MQTT depending on your needs. And then once you make a call, you register a device to it. So that is how you see on the demo you saw Vinny just showed, like you can add a device. So what you're doing is basically you're registering a device. Now that device gets registered to the IoT Hub, and that is where it is going to send all your messages. The device, whatever data it generates, it sends to the Azure IoT Hub. So this is a new service provided by Microsoft, and it is very powerful. It is highly scalable. It can connect to millions of devices, and it can handle tons of data. So that's about Azure IoT Hub. It provides two-way communication. Remember that not only devices can send the data to Hub, but even the IoT Hub can send back some commands and control the devices. So it's a two-way communication. So that's the most important piece of it. And then if we look further, another important thing is this stream analytics. So this is another service that is provided by Microsoft that you can use for doing real-time analysis. So if you see, there are three stream analytics services created for us. One is the device info, one is the rules, and one is the telemetry. So what these do is basically now your Azure IoT Hub gets the data. These stream analysis services actually pull the data from that. They do the processing. They do processing means basically read it and then format it to some other thing that can be understood by external outputs. So to do that, it has an input, it has an output, and in between it's doing the processing, and to do that it uses something called as a query. So that query you can write it in a SQL-like language that is provided by Microsoft. You can use that to process your data and then provide the output. The output could be like, it could be just dumping it into a storage service, or it could be providing the output to Power BI to generate dashboards or anything like that. So it takes the input, processes the data, and then gives the output. So we see three here, three of them because our default pre-configured solution uses three of them. So if you see the telemetry one, this is used by the dashboard that comes on the home screen. And then there are rules that Vinny just showed, saying if your temperature goes beyond this level, you set a rule saying it should send out an alert or something. So those are the rules that you can set. And then there is device info, basically all the information of your devices, whether it is enabled or not, whether it is working properly or not. That is again a real-time report that you're seeing on the website. So these are the three default services that it creates. Apart from that, you have a website which is the WWREM monitor. This is the site that we just saw. So all the pages and everything are part of this website. And then there is a job host. This is another website. What this basically does is it reads data from your streams, it reads it from the event hub, and then it triggers all the alerts that you have configured. So say for example, if I have an alert saying if the temperature goes beyond 50, then I have to send some messages or send some push notifications or anything like that. So you could set that up using this job host. The next thing is a storage account. Now you know that with IoT it generates lots of data. So where are you going to store that? So you may not want to use a relational database because it will be very costly if you go that way. So Azure provides you with blobs. So this is one of the storage accounts that is created that you can use to store all the data, which is much cheaper compared to RDBMS. And some things that you can even store in a database is the device information, the device profiles, their security information and all that. That can go into a database, and for that purpose, the Azure IoT Suite provides you with your document DB. So this is your document database that is provided with it. So basically, these are the components that you get. So one IoT hub, three services, the stream analysis services, one storage account, one document DB. So basically, those are the things that you will see that come along with this. Apart from that, you might be thinking like, how do I customize this? Where is the code for the website? Where is the code for processing the data and all that? So the source code for this remote monitoring solution is available on GitHub. We can share the URL with you. So you can just download that source code. It's ASP.NET 5, and you can modify anything that you want in that. It's completely open source, and then you can redeploy it into the same account that you created. Same solution, and then you can get your customizations into action. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Vineet, I'll just pass it over to you.
Sure, Amit. Thank you very much. And folks, what Amit has just shown you is, the output that I showed you of the solution. Right, what all are the services behind it. As Amit emphasized, full source code is available for the web app, including all the templates and all the services, right? You will be able to customize them. Remember, this is a solution that is, leveraging virtual devices, right? This is being simulated. There is no actual physical devices in this particular deployed solution, but you can absolutely have actual physical devices communicate to the same event hub that Amit talked about and be able to display that data. Okay, so let me just switch over back to the slide deck and make sure that we talk about that solution. We'll keep on going. So this is what you just saw. You can go to AzureIoTSuite.com, create your own solution if you have an Azure subscription, and then you will get a solution that is going to be pre-configured. You can look at, play around with that solution, and I just showed you this the item. If you have to visually represent, right, what exactly is happening and what Amit just showed you, I think this is one of the best diagrams and the simplest diagram of this remote monitoring solution, right? This should make it life easier for you to sort of put all those services together. There is IoT Hub, there is Stream Analytics. What it means is that data that is being coming in from those devices, in this case the simulator that is simulating those devices, or in real case actual devices, right, goes into a web job which is providing that data to the web mobile app, and it's also providing to some logic apps which are integrating with maybe other backend systems and processes. There are two kinds of storages that you looked at: storage blobs, which is binary storage, and then document DB for storing a lot of metrics around that. There's Power BI behind the scene that is actually showing you the dashboards that I just showed you apart from the web app, which is behind the scene. I'll just summarize the same sort of four components. Remember, in the beginning we talked about devices, connectivity, right, or things, connectivity, right, data, and actual what do you do with that data, right? What are the considerations that you need to have when you are designing your own solutions, right? You of course have devices, right? They have their parameters. You need to think about, are these legacy devices or do I need to have new devices, right? You may already have scenarios where in your business scenario, the devices already exist which are collecting data. Then how do I interface with those devices? Maybe I need an intermediate gateway. What data is being captured? What protocol is being used out there? Maybe I need to figure out that. What kind of a connectivity? More importantly, what kind of a security exists, and what kind of a command and control do I have over that particular device, right? Can I send it messages or do I only receive the messages? Once you have decided many of those, you of course establish your storage and capturing of that data. And as Amit also mentioned, there's cost elements. There are also technical elements about should it be relational, should it be non-relational, should it be persisted, or is it so much of data that I should just consume and only store the data, only persist the data that really makes sense. Again, security is going to be important because you're capturing a data that may actually be a lot more confidential, that you need to make sure that you encrypt or you store that data. You're also then processing the data, applying rules, right? And there are these questions that you should ask. What kind of business rules? What kind of automation? There's a whole topic around machine learning, which is essentially taking the data, processing it, finding historical patterns, building models so that you could achieve some other scenarios like, okay, as you saw in one of those example of ThyssenKrupp, is can I plan my maintenance schedule based on what historically I have known as the solution, as the data. And then of course you could do, should you do out of the box that Microsoft provides? Should you look at custom solutions? Should you have this data feed going into some other system, maybe which is your primary system? What kind of APIs you may want to build because you may want to integrate with all of your solutions. Now, if you are able to monitor, if you're able to see the slide, whatever is included in the dotted lines, right? Many of these decisions are already taken as a part of your Azure IoT Suite deployment, right? This is all the set of services which are running on the cloud, and Microsoft provides you to get started. In the next series, in the next session of this series, we'll talk more about devices and what Microsoft also provides as the device level operating system. But right now, Azure IoT Suite takes care of all the aspects of storage, rules, and analytics part of it. And again, I showed you this slide already. This covers, the essence of our topic that we had planned for Azure IoT Suite. I do want to just bring up one slide, who we are. Some of you may be aware of WinWire. Some of you may be hearing about us for the first time, right? I just want to leave you with the kind of technologies that we have expertise in. Our tagline is making information actionable, and you will see these solutions that Microsoft is coming up with are very much tied to our vision of the kind of solutions we build. You have data, it has to become actionable, right? And Azure IoT Suite is one of the large components of that solution. I also want to talk about quickly that because of those capabilities that we have, Microsoft has also recognized us, and we are part of an exclusive group of partners of Microsoft where they provide us all these informations much ahead of how the other solution providers or other companies are getting it. This is called a Red Carpet program. We are part of the Azure IoT Suite Red Carpet program and also the Cortana Analytics Red Carpet program. With few minutes left in this session, I will also like to give you information about an offer. We have an offering around helping you as an organization think about all these steps that you need to take. In a very quick summary, our architects and our team help you do a much more deeper dive overview of what the IoT solution is all about. We will discuss your needs, and that's what is called as IoT strategy briefing. We then take it to the next level by going deeper by doing what is called an architectural design session. This will be with your technical team, and then plan out a proof of concept that would help you further get confirmation on these are the right elements for our business to solve our business problems. And then, of course, look at how to scale it, how to deploy it into a production environment. I thank everyone who has been patiently listening through this webinar. I will hand it over back to Noor to wrap it up and see if there are any questions that we can help answer. Do remember there is a next webinar coming in for a couple of weeks from now, where we will cover the devices side of the IoT solution and what Microsoft has provided as called as the Windows 10 IoT core for the solution. Noor, over to you.
Thank you, Vineet and Amit, for the insightful session. So yes, we have a few questions coming from the audience. The first one coming from the Mark, where he asks, is it enough to have an Azure account to use Azure IoT Suite?
Yes, that certainly is a very good, and I see another question which is, I think, related. What is the URL that I mentioned? You do need to have an Azure subscription, and you need to go to Azure IoT Suite.com, which will allow you to set up those pre-configured solutions. But when you're pre-configuring your solution, you will need to have an Azure subscription, because all those services that you saw will get deployed into that particular Azure subscription. So that is a minimum that you need. There is certainly nothing else that you need to have on premises right now to at least start playing around with these services.
Thanks, Vineet. So another question, is there a way where we can customize any of the pre-configured solutions in the Azure IoT?
Absolutely, and as Amit already mentioned, Microsoft does provide this base solution for you to look around. This is available on GitHub. If you go to github.com/Azure and search for the remote monitoring solution, you will get to see that. This is, of course, available to you to play around with it. When you look at a much more planned solution, there are other aspects that you have to consider, which is the offering that we talked about, where we can help you through the entire process.
Thanks, Vineet. So the other question is it possible to get the sample code on GitHub, GIT Hub?
Yes, it is. As I mentioned, github.com/Azure is where you will be able to get that data.
Thank you. So I have one more question. So where it says, like, can I create an IoT solution on Azure without using any of the pre-configured solutions?
Oh, that's certainly possible. And if you remember, I was talking about in the beginning of the session, you could have gone to the Azure portal and created those stream analytics, created those document DB, created the web app and other API services all on your own. Individually, all those services are possible. You will be responsible on how to connect those things together, make the communication, define the schema, and of course, it's going to be a lot more time that it will take. Of course, it's feasible, but with these pre-configured solutions, I'm not sure if you will like to do that.
Thanks, Vineet. I think those are the questions for the day. So folks, if you have any further questions, I request you to write to us at marketing@winwire.com, and we will have those questions answered from Vineet and Amit as soon as possible. So before we wrap up, again, I would like to highlight our next webinar, which is on Windows IoT Core on December 10th. So guys, don't miss, stay tuned for next webinar. Thanks again for taking to join this webinar, and I hope you find it very interesting. And looking forward you all for joining us for our next webinar. Thanks, Vineet, and thanks, Amit, for the wonderful session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.